Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for everyone who is watching the webinar tonight. It's really awesome to be back with you guys. My name is Laura O'Reilly. I'm the CEO of Fighting Chance, and we want to be hosting this set of webinars in order to really empower and inform people in the Fighting Chance network, but indeed, people more broadly about the NDIS and what it means. So, I want to certainly begin by thanking all the people who have watched our first webinar. We were, so amazed to see that nearly 160 people have watched the first webinar that we did on the NDIS, which I think really shows the hunger for this sort of information. So yes, and we're very excited to share some information with you again tonight. Like we did last time, just want to begin with a bit of a disclosure. I don't work for the NDIS. I'm certainly not an NDIS expert, but in my work, I've had the opportunity to get to understand about the NDIS and what it means, and have had access to actual experts who I sort of want to bring to everyone else's attention. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. So I am really thrilled to be joined for tonight's webinar by Pieta Manning. Pieta is based in the ACT, which, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, has been an NDIS trial site since July 2014. And in the last 8 months, as we've just been discussing, Pieta has been working as an independent supports coordinator through her business, Your Plan, Your Way, which is all about supporting people with NDIS plans to best manage and manage that plan. So we're really lucky that Pieta's here with us, and I'm going to ask her lots of questions. But just a few admin pieces. Don't forget that you can ask questions on the webinar. And if you are live streaming through YouTube, you're able to email questions directly to my email, to laura@fightingchance.org.au, and I will get them straight to Pieta. Okay, so before we get into the meat of the webinar, talking to Pieta about her experiences in the ACT, just want to begin with a few updates from in the last month. So in mid-August, the NDIA put out another quarterly report, which was another awesome opportunity to get some information about what's happening at that national level with the NDIS. And we have found out from that report that there are 19,817 people who have become participants of NDIS, of whom about just over 17,000 have their individualised plan, which is great. Over 952 million has been committed for participant support, which is awesome. And participant satisfaction is really high, with 95% rating their plan, and the process is good or very good, which to me is, I think, the most exciting statistic that I see coming out of those quarterly reports. And we have a bit of information, some sort of summary of the quarterly reports on the Fighting Chance Facebook page if you want to check it out. So the second update, this is more noise that I think is sort of in the media at the moment, but there's some talk about the government potentially looking at sort of rolling back the NDIS timeline, or extending out the timeline. And I think that they're just speculative media reports at this stage, but I think it is also quite concerning. But I think really it's a watching brief to see what the government do. But Senator Fifield has really reiterated that the government remains committed to rolling out the NDIS in full, which I think we should be optimistic about, and I am optimistic that the government will remain committed to their word and understand how important this reform is for people with disability. So yes, very much a watching brief. Okay, so those are the two main updates that I'm aware of in the last month. We now get to the exciting piece of the webinar, which is to hear what Pieta has to say. So I'm going to ask Pieta a bunch of questions about her work in Canberra, and I hope will really give a lot of families out there who are still to come online with NDIS a sense of what's going to come. So Pieta, can you explain to us what supports coordination is?
So when you receive an NDIS plan, one of the roles that's funded in that plan is a supports coordinator or a sports connector. Mm-hmm. And that is the person who can help you actually understand what's in your plan and give you some assistance to figure out what's achievable. and connect with the supports that you need to achieve the goals that you've put in your plan. And that can be for many people who haven't had access to a lot of therapists, who haven't had, you know, the supports that they've needed. It might be finding a new therapist. It might be re-establishing contact with therapists, helping them to figure out how they're going to use their existing providers. And it also is a very important part of it is actually connecting to their community. So it's not just about connection to funded supports, it's actually about helping people connect to their wider community and then building up those informal networks. And I think probably most importantly for us, it's about people being confident in the processes of the NDIS and how it's going to work for them and understanding how they can make the plan work the best for them. We're independent coordination of support, so that's the only thing we supply. And this came about from just seeing that many people, when they had their plans and went to a larger provider, the provider is actually, the disability provider is actually doing a lot of other things in their plan. So our approach is, because we only provide coordination of supports, is to make sure that we give a really good across the board advice to people so that they can access lots of different types of supports.
I think that confidence piece is, for me, you know, and certainly having spoken to a lot of fighting chance families who are in Sydney and who, you know, who are yet to see what the process is that confidence piece of knowing, you know, knowing what's going to come. I can imagine that's a massive part.
And that's right up to when people get their plans. So often we do work with people in the pre-planning stage as well, but very often we get people who are calling us and they have the plan. And I think it's a real shame, because for me, suddenly having this amazing bucket of funding that you can use to do the most incredible stuff with, that should be a really exciting and really hopeful time. Many people are just so overwhelmed and anxious because they don't understand what's involved, and that's definitely, we see that as our role, is to sit down with people and almost put that to the side and talk about goals, and then see, okay, what can you use this funding for, and how can we connect you to some really good supports to achieve those goals. I think people have gotten a little bit caught up in the dollars and the numbers and everything, and forgotten that the point of this scheme is to actually build really positive, exciting, you know, full lives for people, and to have them engage with their communities, because we know how much people give into their communities when they can be a positive part of them.
Love what you guys do. It's so exciting, and that's why I want to share what you can do with as many people as we can. So can you give us a bit of context on the process that people have been through before they come to you? So what is, you know, and for our fighting chance families, you know, what do they expect when NDIS goes live in this area?
Okay, so basically once they announce a rollout in an area, it's then up to people. So in certain areas it'll be a staged rollout in ages and stages. In Canberra, we're still transitioning whole of population in. But basically, it's about contacting the NDIS. There will be some triggers if people are already receiving supports that they will be connected with the NDIS. I'd suggest just go to the NDIS, and there's what they call an access request pack. And that's a pretty standard information form. It'll ask you lots of information about your background. Then it'll actually have, part of that is an evidence of disability. So the important thing to remember, to be eligible for the NDIS, your disability has to be permanent and it has to be substantial. It's really interesting. It's really good to understand that aspect of it. So what it's saying is, when you go to get your evidence of disability from your specialist or your GP or whoever it is that you need to get those, is that they understand the information that you need, and that is that you need evidence of permanency and of substantial impact on your ability to function at what we would consider a normal level. We've seen with that, so in that process, a lot of GPs not understanding, a lot of specialists, especially when NDIS is new in an area, not understanding that. So what we want is, the NDIS wants an explanation of how that person's disability affects their functionality. You put your application in, under the legislation, they have to contact you within 21 days to tell you whether you've been accepted into the scheme or whether your application has been refused. I think one of the really important things that people understand here is that if your application is refused, that's not the end of the world. Often in the letter, they'll actually say why it's been refused, and that might be, you know, you didn't show us enough evidence of functional impact. You didn't show us enough evidence of permanency. So we've seen numbers of people that have got that letter back, just gone back to their specialists, had the specialist reword, think a bit more about what they want, come back, reapply, and they're in. Also, in each area, there'll usually be a government, an advocacy body, a non-government body that will be given funding to provide people with advocacy. If they get a negative decision and they want to challenge it, there's usually a body there that can support them to do that. So it's not the end of the world, but you're accepted into the scheme. You'll probably be contacted, depending on how the rollout's going. You'll be given an appointment date, and then you'll be able to work towards that appointment date, getting ready for the appointment date with your planner. After the meeting, I mean, every sort of area is different, but then after the meeting, there's usually a period of time between then and actually getting an approved plan. So I think that's one thing to also remember, that you need to start preparing, but be ready for the long game, almost. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to be, it's not going to be a quick process. And definitely we'll talk a bit more about how you can get ready. But once you get in it, you do have to wait, because you'll have to go on, you know, wait for a little bit for it to be approved.
Okay, awesome. So can you explain a little bit about what you do is funded in people's plans? Like, for example, if someone wanted to, you know, engage you to help them to get the most out of their plans, does that mean that they lose some other, you know, support?
So that's one of the interesting things about planning in the NDIS plan. So the NDIS acknowledge that this is a completely new sort of, it's a new thing that none of us are really familiar with, and we're all still learning. So in the plans, there's actually a number of roles that they pay for to assist you. So what happens is you will, under the new, the way it works for coordination of supports, when you go in to have your planning meeting, you'll be actually able to say to your planner, look, I think I've got this covered. I won't need any coordination of supports. I think I'll be right. And the planner will go, cool, no worries. Or you might say, look, I think I really would like, I think I know what I'm doing, but it'd be really good to help someone just get it set up. And after that, I think we'll be okay. Or you might go, I've got no idea. I'm going to need heaps of help. I don't know who my therapists are going to be. I'm new in the area. I may not have a very good support network in the area. I'm feeling really overwhelmed, and so I'm going to need. So you can talk to your planner about the level of support you need. Then in your plan, you'll actually have provided funding for that. Now that's over and above any of the funding for your actual supports. This is given in addition. So one of the other roles that's a part of that is what's called a plan manager. And it's the same thing. So that's the person who can offer financial assistance around self-management. And again, that is funded over and above any other funds. So there are definitely, that's the thing I say to people, you don't have to do this by yourself. And coordination of supports hours are given whether you're self-managed or agency managed. So you definitely have access to that help in the plan.
So for people, if people are watching and they're thinking, I'm really overwhelmed by even the prospect of this, the important thing to take away is that they can ask for help as part of the plan.
Absolutely. And that's actually built into the plan. The NDIS totally acknowledges that.
Great. Okay. So, and if we talk a little bit about self-management, we hear a lot that one of the goals for the NDIS is for a lot of people to be self-managing. We talked about 20% today. What does that mean? How does that differ from other kind of like modes of engaging with NDIS?
So when you get your plan, you'll have a think about beforehand about how you're going to manage it. So the big difference is there's 3 different models, and you can have combinations of those as well. So the first is an agency modelled support in your plan. So basically, and that means that you have to use a provider that's registered with the NDIS, and that what happens then is you'll engage that provider, and that provider will actually access the funding that the NDIS is holding for you directly. So And for a lot of people, this works. If you've got a big accommodation package and you're really happy with your provider, you might say, well, look, we're going to have that agency managed because basically we know everything's running really well there. You can also be self-managed. So when you're self-managed, the main advantage of that is that you don't have to use providers that are registered with the NDIS. Because of the nature of the scheme's very new, and also some of the requirements around regulating, most of the people who are registered providers are the bigger disability providers in the sector. That's great, but it may not suit you. You might want to investigate some more innovative supports. You might want to use some more local, smaller organisations that you want to support that may not have that size and depth to register. So if you're self-managing, it is basically that choice and control you have to use whoever you want. All they have to do is have an ABN, and what happens is just the same as you and I would go and have a haircut. We make a decision about who we're going to use. We might go and try someone, come back there, but then we find someone we like and we go there. It's our choice. What happens then is you go to that provider, they provide a service to you, they give you an invoice, and then you access the participant portal through the NDIS, and you claim the cost of that service, and the NDIS pays the cost of that service, and then you can pay your provider. The participant portal is incredibly easy to use. Like you can use it really easily on an iPad, and basically I say to people, if you can pay a bill online, you can navigate the portal. It's very, very simple. Amazing. So the interesting thing about being self-managed though is if you decide that the whole thing of having to process invoices and go on the portal really is just not for you, and that's perfectly fine. As part of self-managing, you can make the decision to engage what's called a plan manager. It's a bit of a misnomer because it somehow implies that you're handing your plan over. Basically, it's a financial intermediary. It's a bookkeeper who acts on your behalf to pay your service providers. So you are still self-managing. You are in total control and direction of your plan. You choose the providers you want. You engage the providers you want. When it comes time, that provider actually sends the invoice to your plan manager, financial intermediary. They claim the cost of that service from the NDIS, and then they pay. So this is what I'm saying, it's a fantastic, they really have acknowledged, and I think not enough people understand the supports that's there. So in your plan, when you get your plan, you can basically employ a bookkeeper and a coordinator to make sure you can drive your plan towards the goals that you want. Amazing. Yeah, it's great.
It's so exciting.
People don't know, they go, really? Really?
Yes.
But it's true.
That's why we wanted you here to tell everybody about it, because it's so exciting. Okay, so can you give us some examples of what you do for people? And let's sort of divide it into, before you get your approved plan and after. What sort of supports can you provide to people before they get their plan?
So pre-planning, in the ACT, people can actually have access to grants that help them a bit with pre-planning, but we generally we like to engage with people. We like to help them before they go into the NDIS process. And that's really about talking like this, making sure people are confident, they know they're going to go, then understand the process that they're about to enter into. Pre-planning's a really important time as well, and especially we're seeing that as the scheme is rolling out and pressure is being put on planners and on the agency to get the plans approved quicker, it's actually becoming evident that you really need to do good pre-planning, so that when you go to your planning meeting with your planner, you are able to provide some documentation or some evidence, not so much evidence, some documentation and ideas that are genuinely yours. Your planner, when you have your meeting, you may have a business support officer with your planner, and they'll be madly, but we've all been to meetings where you get the minutes back and you go, I don't know that I was at this meeting. It was not the same meeting that I went to. So the idea of pre-planning is actually to start just jotting some stuff down and writing some stuff and exploring some ideas and having it documented so that you can actually give it to the planner and they take away something that's genuinely yours. So the first thing we can do, you know, and you're looking at pre-planning, is just looking, you know, we encourage people to look at the services and map out the services that they're currently using. Think about them, whether they want to continue with those services or investigate something else. Think about other things that they'd always wanted to try, things that they may have not have the money to access, you know, basic things like, you know, therapies and you know, ongoing supports like that, and have a bit of an idea of how that might fit, and then be able to give that to their planner. And we definitely support people in that time.
Yes.
The other thing with the planning meetings is you can take whoever you like along to them. So if you have a good relationship with a provider that plays a big part in your life, or a support worker that plays a big part in your life, they can come to the meeting with you. Your a member of your family, a teacher, whoever you feel can support you best can come along to that meeting. Once we get in the plans, definitely, and a lot of people they arrive and they've got their plan, and they're like, first of all, as I say to people, is we have a quick look through and we see the scope of the funding they have, and then we think about you know, who they're going to use in their plan very quickly. But what I really like to get people on to straight away is thinking about the goals. And this is why I encourage people, again, not to get too wrapped up in the dollars and the cents, but think about you know, what is the goals and who might contribute to those goals. So, for example, we're saying, you know, if my goal was to improve my independent living skills, and a smaller goal under that might be that I want to be able to cook a meal for my family once a week. So we'll have that at the top as the goal. The next thing is, well, we want to get an OT in because we want to have a look at some adaptive stuff and make sure that we're developing the right skills to be able to do those things. We might get, I might have a few sensory issues around food, so we might get a dietitian in to look at that. We might get the speechy in to have a bit of a look at that. We definitely need a therapy assistant or a support assistant who's going to come and help me actually do the cooking in my home. And we've found a local cooking class. It's a mainstream cooking class on Tuesday mornings, and we want to access that. That's going to push me on and help develop my skills. So suddenly, out of that, instead of looking at this money and thinking about how much therapy we can get, what we've done is put a goal, and we've actually thought about who we need to support that goal. And as well, what's great for therapists is when you take that to them, it's not just 10 hours of OT, they have a functional outcome that you want to work on. So that's how we encourage. And then the next step is, who's the OT?
Yes.
You know, and we have a good knowledge in our area of what's going on. We connect people with OTs, we connect them to the cooking class, we help them find the right support worker, engage with the right providers. And then through the plan, there's actually, if there's capacity in the hours that they've been given for coordination of supports, we'll just check in with them. How's it going? Is there anything else you want to try? Right through, and then that goes right through to the end of the plan, where we can actually help people start to do their review and look back over their plan and think about new goals for the next 12 months.
Yeah, awesome. So in the pre you're sort of getting the plan, it's about that preparation. It's about, you know, thinking through what you like that you currently have and what you want, so that you can go into that meeting, you know, really well prepared. And then after that, you know, once you've got the plan, it's about then working out how you're going to use it to meet goals.
That's right.
Very exciting. And I love the mention of mainstream services. We talked about that in the previous webinar, that I think, you know, it's a bit of a mind shift for people. That, you know, historically we've thought, which are the providers in the disability space. Under NDIS, it's about which are the providers in the society that, you know, let me achieve the things that I want to achieve.
And also acknowledging that to access that mainstream support, the person may need ongoing support to do that, or they might just need a little bit of support at the beginning until they get comfortable and confident in that space, and then they're able to access that mainstream community group or activity all by themselves. And that's, I think, one of the things, the key things about the NDIS is, you know, we know it's an insurance scheme, but what you need to remember is that the insurance scheme is about looking, I mean, no altruism, looking in 5 years' time. So we know that it's about providing support. So at the basic level, what support do you need to get up out of bed in the morning, have a shower, have breakfast, and get out that front door? So the interesting thing is the NDIS doesn't separate who it's for. So those supports are needed. If it's for someone with an intellectual disability or a physical disability or a psychosocial disability, they're all going to be slightly different, but they're all going to need a bit of support. So the NDIS is saying, yep, we are going to provide that support to assist you. But they're also saying that we know if we provide this support now, that in 5 years' time, that person may need less support to do those things.
Absolutely.
Or for people who we know, it's have a serious disability, it might just be about, we know if we provide that quality of support, their health and wellbeing is going to be maintained and their health and wellbeing needs are not going to increase. So this is where the interaction with mainstream is really essential, because it's about actually moving people on from being caught in that cycle of service delivery. So if I'm going to have a support that's going to teach me to cook one night a week, well then the NDIS are going to pretty much want to see some outcomes after 12 months or 2 years to say, well, that's great, because now this person can cook that meal, let's move on to a new goal. The other thing, some people have been fearful and saying, oh, well, I lose that funding. But I think the main thing is to think about the goal. So once you've achieved that goal, you can actually move that supported funding into a new goal.
Yes.
So,
which is such a different way of thinking to the historical sector. The historical sector, it seems to me, has been about maintain, or sort of, but it's static, and it's sort of, this is what it is, and you get this level of support for life, and that's it. What I think a lot of people, you know, and certainly people who talk about, oh, you know, cost blast and all those sorts of things, is into the future, is that it's all about empowering people to work on individual skills, get better, and such that they won't need those supports.
So for example, someone that through default has gone into quite a high level of support in supported accommodation, they might be in their mid-20s, they have the capacity, but because they're in that accommodation that provides a high level of support, they're not going to develop a whole lot of independent living skills. So that person, given the opportunity to develop independent living skills, they're connected to their local community by some volunteering. They're starting to do some training to go into mainstream work 2 days a week. In 5 years' time for that person, we're looking going, well, really, they could probably be living a lot more independently in the community. They're going to be operating more independently in community, and definitely not receiving, because the difference between needing support and receiving support, I think, is something that's quite different. They won't be receiving the amount of support they are now. So let's put that investment in.
Yes, investment. That's what it is.
It is an investment.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So just a reminder, I apologise if anybody has written questions within the webinar. I don't have Sean with me today, and I don't know how to access those. So just a reminder, if you have questions, please definitely email me. I'm just checking them regularly. So it's laura@fightingchance.org.au, and I will put them directly to Pieta. So the next question I have is around engaging with support work, current service providers. So if someone has got, you know, they've got their NDIS plan, they think that they want to access an existing service provider or maybe a new one, what is that process, and how do you support people to kind of have that conversation?
So one of the things that's been indicated, so that on the 1st of August, the NDIS changed the way their plans look, and how the actual participants interact with their plans. So previously, there was the famous line items and clusters that everyone got a bit caught up with, and so they could be a little bit prescriptive in the sense of 3 hours Saturday morning, 6 hours during the day. Now what's happening is that if you've got community access funding, it'll just be one whole amount. So part of the challenge there for participants and providers is that we need to be very clear about what supports are going to be provided. And this is where the NDIS have said the service agreements are becoming much more important. So a service agreement, and I think this is the shift that we try and to get people to think about. Previously, a body would hold your funding, and the service agreement was really, you know, basically they would come and say, here, sign this, we're providing you this service. And people were, you know, very much in that mode of just signing things off. Maybe having a look and investigating, making sure it was, but there really wasn't a whole lot of negotiation. It was very much the sense of, here's a complete document, for you to sign. The service agreement with providers now becomes an agreement between the participant and the provider. So, for example, you decide that you're going to access a particular provider, or you may not know exactly which provider, and I'm encouraging people to do this as well. You might know that I want support. So my shift, my cooking shift on a Wednesday night is going to take place on a Wednesday night. I'm going to go to a cooking class on Tuesday morning. I'm not quite sure who I'm going to use, but I know what I want from the shift. So we're going to have a community access support. So we sort of draw this out in little columns. Community access support, when is it going to take place? It's going to be 3 hours on Tuesday morning and 3 hours on Wednesday night. And then we have a description of what the shift is. On Tuesday morning, a person will come, the support assistant will come and pick up Pieta from her home. They will take her to the cooking class and actively support her in that cooking class. The support worker will have knowledge of the strategies that have been developed by the OT and will actively support Pieta to follow these. Then they'll bring her back to her home. On Wednesday night, they will arrive at Pieta's house at this time, and they will perform these tasks. They'll assist her to follow a cooking instruction. They will assist her to cook the meal. They will then sit and eat the meal with her, and then assist her to clean up, and also discuss with her what they're going to cook the following week and make up a shopping list. On the bottom, and we've had. We've said to people, you can actually be quite specific. So we know for some people it's really important that the people that work with them are known to them. And so we can actually say that for this shift, the person who completes this shift must be known to the person. And if nobody that is familiar with the person is available, we don't want this shift to take place. So quite specific.
Very specific. Yep.
So what we're doing at the moment is we actually offer this to a number of organisations.
And see who's
interested.
Right. Oh, wow.
You know, so say here, this is what we assist our clients to do. We email it to 3 organisations. We might preface it by a little bit of a description about the person and about, if they have any particular needs. And, would your organisation feel that they'd have some staff suitable to support this person? And what's great is it makes it easier for the organisation as well, because they might come back and say, look, I'm really sorry. At the moment, we probably don't have anyone that can provide that support. So thank you, awesome. Those organisations get a big tick from me because at least they're honest and communicating, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to send them, other people. It just means I know. And then you'll get. We've had a couple of cases where 2 organisations have come back. And so we help set up some meetings with them, with our client, and the clients meet them, and they might say, well, look, Peter, I actually preferred this organisation. So the work that we did to put that descriptor in then becomes a part of the service agreement. So there's a whole lot on the front that sits, and it says things like you have to give us X amount of notice. We're going to charge you this much. So then they add all the stuff that says we're going to, how much are we going to charge you? This is how much it's going to cost you if it's a public holiday. But it means that service agreement now is made up of 2 pieces. One that's being contributed by the client and one that's contributed by the service provider. Now that's an agreement.
Yes, it is. It's an two equal parties come to the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be as complicated as we said. It might be you may not require that level of detail, but it's still about recording what you want and making sure the provider, because as well, in 12 months' time, I come back to the provider and go, I didn't learn to roller skate. You go, well, it wasn't in the service agreement. So it actually protects both parties. It makes it very clear the scope of work that the provider is expected to complete.
Amazing. So we have questions flooding in, so thank you to everybody for sending them. So the first question we have is about accommodation. So the question is, as far as I know, there is no provision for anything associated with accommodation, neither bricks and mortar nor rental assistance. Were you talking about goals regarding living skills only? And that's from Mary Mockler. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Mary. Okay, so the NDIS will not, they don't subsidy rent. And they're not actually providing any additional housing. I think what's really interesting is here, and this is part of people understanding what's possible with their packages, and also in the pre-planning phase, understanding what their aim is that the NDIS won't provide rental assistance, but if you can understand how you can use your package, you can definitely use your package to give you the support to move into more independent living. So, for example, we've seen people that have lived in group homes. Can't call them anything else except that. There's nothing intentional about the people that live together. But with the, if you've got 3 people who intentionally do want to live together, they're able to pool their funding. So, for example, they may only need one support worker to come in the morning. They all might be heading out to work or heading out to their various day activities. They may only need one support worker in the morning, so they pool their funding to pay for that one support worker to come in and work with them. And then in the evening, it might be they'd actually need 2 or 3 people because they might have different needs. So it is about understanding how you can use your funding. And I suppose as well, if you identify in your pre-planning that independent living is a really important goal for you, actually having a look around and seeing how you might achieve that. I mean, this is a partnership with the funding body. So it is very much about thinking about how you can achieve that. So whether that is investigating new accommodation opportunities, and whether that might be that you need more support to actually live independently, or whether it means you can find someone else that you want to share with and pool funding. It is a work in progress, and I know it's a huge issue.
Yes.
But I think that it's something that we need to work cooperatively with the agency, and also for people to use, understand how they can use their funding to support those goals, and be really clear, in your pre-planning that that's a really important goal for you. And do a bit of the back work yourself. So as I said, this is a partnership. Now, this is the double-edged sword of choice and control.
Yes.
Okay. So is that you are going to have to put a whole lot more effort into this, but if you do, and you can start thinking about some solutions for the issues that you have yourself, you at least have an avenue to get the funding you need to support those goals.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it doesn't resolve the question of the cost of the bricks and mortar, but if you can resolve that, there's all these other ways that you can live in more kind of intentional, community-based, not the sort of traditional group housing thing. And
I think that is something that will grow. I'm an eternal optimist, and I do believe that as we break out of that brain space of the traditional sector ideas, that we will start to think, I have new ideas. And my thing is with people is just look for networks, look for other people who want to achieve the same things that you do. Look for people who are having interesting ideas and chat to them, and, just keep in a little bit of contact, because I do believe that there's going to be a really organic ground level growth of new things happening.
I agree. So we've got another geography-based question from Marie. So I'm wondering if I bring my daughter up here to Queensland, so Monique lives down here, but her family's in Queensland, so away from her day programs and accommodation in Sydney, say for a month, will she be able to use that money for the cost of the day programs in Sydney and transfer it up to where she's going and then bring it back?
Yeah, so that's going to be the beauty of a national scheme. And certainly I have clients already whose families have travelled to Queensland for family things, and what they've actually been able to do is in preparation, they've contacted support organisations in Queensland, so that when they go to Queensland, but this family had a couple of weeks up there for family issues, they actually have support waiting. So that funding is definitely transferable because they're self-managed, and they can choose providers that don't have to be registered with the NDIS. So that also gets around the problem of moving out of a trial site area into an area that hasn't yet come on board. Your funding sits with you, because remembering that you're only charged for the services you receive. So if you are engaged, you're going to a regular activity during the day, it's not as though if you're not there for a whole week, they still take your money.
Mm-hmm.
The NDIS, if you give them, so you're going away for a week, you give them appropriate notice.
Mm-hmm.
That funding, they can't charge you for that time.
It sits with the individual.
It sits with the individual. Yeah. So if that individual is now, and we have families that that manage their funding in a way that means they're actually banking hours per week, so that at the end of the year they can go on a family holiday and have a high level of support when they go on the family holiday. Yeah, so it's really very, very flexible.
I just love the NDIS. It just makes me so happy. So any other questions, please keep them coming. Meanwhile, I'll go back to my many questions. So can you give us a bit of a sense of your experience from the ACT in the last year? Like, what are people achieving, through their plan? Can you give us a bit of a sense of, because you do hear lots of different reports. In your experience, are people having better outcomes post NDIS than they were, pre NDIS? Definitely better outcomes.
It's a bit, that's the old saying, be careful what you ask for because you just might get it. Or people don't always get exactly what they think they're going to get, but definitely the supports are there. So, and people, I think, are starting to understand how they can utilise their funding better. So, for example, we were talking earlier about a family whose daughter left school last year, high physical needs and has an intellectual disability. And basically when her parents went to look for things for her to do during the day, there was nothing available because of her level of physical need. So they had funding, they had plenty of funding, but basically everyone just went a little bit too hard. We can't provide that. So their alternative was to actually intentionally employ the support workers themselves. So they figured out what they wanted their daughter to be doing. Again, set the goals, think about who they needed to support those goals, and they actually advertised for support people to work with their daughter. So they employed, I think they've ended up employing, 4 or 5. They also use a disability provider for backup, but the people that they employed had no disability experience. They all had lived experience of people with disability. The family did the training themselves, and intentionally employed young women in their 20s that their daughter would want to hang out with. She doesn't want to hang out with me. I'm her mum. She wants to hang out with and go and do fun things with.
Very important.
So they've actually used HireUp as the platform to employ their workers through, and are having had just great success. And because of the confidence that they have in those workers, are actually now investigating lots of new things that she can start to get involved with because they know they've got a really good team of people. I mean, the example, as I said, of young people in their mid-20s that are caught in sort of group homes that previously have been one of 4 people in a group home who basically just went along to the same activities that the other people, and even if that wasn't age appropriate for them, because that was just how they were managed. And sometimes not through any fault of the providers, but just because that was all their funding allowed them to do. They had no funding for one-on-one supports. So suddenly that person being able to go and do work experience that's going to lead to to open employment, that person being able to go and have support to do volunteering in their local community and build up those community connections, to be able to go and still do some group stuff, still go and do group stuff, but as well go out to dinner once a fortnight with a couple of blokes he knows from somewhere else with support. So that's what I'm saying, where it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He still has a great supported accommodation package, but building on that and actually saying, and as I said, probably in a couple of years' time, looking that he probably won't fit in there and he'll probably actually move on, and that's fantastic. So utilising the existing supports, as I said, not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but making sure they're being used to their best, and then layering on top of that some fantastic, really individualised goal supports. So I think that's the big thing for people to understand, is maintain that level of support that people need, but then just dream a little bit bigger on top of that as well.
Amazing. We've just had one more question come in from Mary. It's just loading on my phone, Mary. Give me 1 second. decided it's going to take forever. Come on, phone. Here we go. One concern voiced by many parents is that costs will go up. We've been told that we will be paying full cost for services that are subsidised now. For example, respite equipment, repairs, etc. They're potentially going to become much more expensive.
Yep.
Have you had any experience of that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you are. You are going to be paying the full commercial price, because the whole idea of this is that those businesses will not be subsidised. You, as the consumer, will be purchasing the product. So absolutely, and this has been one of the big shocks for people, is the fact that suddenly, your respite care that cost you $20 an hour or cost you $20 a day is now going to cost you upwards to $600 or $800 a day, if that's the level of care your person requires.
So does the plan?
But yeah, exactly. So when you get your plan, and I'm assuming this is how the plan's going to look, because they could completely different in 6 months, and even the NDIA acknowledges that. But at the moment, you will get a supported, support to live independently, and you'll get a bucket of money. But what's going to have happened with that is the back of house work. The planner will have worked out exactly what you need and have given you the money to cover that. And that is based on the NDIS rates. So not to get too caught up in the prices, but the price lists are on the NDIS website. You can look up the price lists for whatever area you're in, whether it's ACT or New South Wales or Tasmania, whatever. And the NDIS sets out a price per hour and a price per service that they will pay. Now, this means that you can, when you go to access a service, they're going to charge you the whole price. But that's because your funding sits with you, not with the service provider. So you make that decision. So it's also up to you. If you're self-managing, you can use a provider that's not registered with the agency. Now, this may mean, and I've said to a couple of families they're using therapy, quite a lot of therapy. The agency rate for therapy is $168 an hour. But if you're going to be using that therapist, on an ongoing basis, then is there a negotiation that you can make to say, well, actually, we're going to be using you for the next 12 months. We want to pay you $150 an hour. Or conversely, you might have an awesome therapist that you've used, a psychologist or somebody, and they might charge $220 an hour. It is your choice to pay them more. But that's exactly, I said to people, it's like, the NDIS are going to pay you to buy some eggs. Me, I like to go and buy my cage-free eggs. Somebody else might not really care. They go and buy just the cheapest eggs they can find. And then the next door neighbour might say, well, I would rather go down the road to the farmer and I'm only going to get 10 eggs for the same price, but I know they're really good eggs. So that's the choice. That's what I'm saying. This is the double-edged sword of choice and control. It's really confronting when you suddenly realise how much services cost. But is this... we've all been living in a bit of a smoky room if we haven't known all the prices, and it's very confronting for people to realise. But this is the cost of doing business. This is. I mean, and this is where the service agreements and understanding what you're getting for that charge is really important. So, I mean, I say to people, if your mechanic gave you a bill, if he gave you a bill that said for $2,500 and it said fixed car, you give it back to him. There's no way you take it. So this is a similar example. You are paying for the service, so understand what the service is. But definitely, yes, you will start being charged. But as a consumer, it's up to you where you want to pay. If you want to pay more and go to that provider, absolutely, that's your choice.
I think that's a piece of that, Mary, I just touched on in the last webinar, just around, the money that's available for support is going to go up by a factor of roughly 4. The number of people who are increasing, who are becoming participants is not doubling. So I think it's a reflection of, there's going to be more people added, but the existing people will have more funds to, to be able to balance out the fact that things are going to,
And as we said, ultimately, in terms of getting value for money, the government is going to know. We all know that with many service providers and with block funding, that people were block funded for a certain amount and only received services to a lesser value.
Yes.
We know that.
Yes.
So this is actually a way of saying, this is the amount of service that you're being funded for. That is the amount of service you're going to receive.
Yes.
So that's for some people as well. It might be confronting. So there may actually be people that are on packages that are very, very high. And when they get their NDIS package, it might actually be lower. But my suggestion would be to you is, even though your package that was being block funded to your main provider was for that amount, were you actually receiving the services to equal that amount, that value?
Yeah. So we're running a little out of time. We've got about 9 minutes and there's some questions rolling in. So one question, a friend sued the hospital and her child received about $80,000 in compensation. Will this compromise what NDIS funding she can receive?
That's a question that you need to talk about for them, because there is in the access thing, in the access application, questions about the type of compensation payments, but definitely a conversation I would still apply and have a conversation about with them, because if you have a child whose disability has come about of that, what is the functional impact going to be over the whole of that child's life? Remembering that NDIS is a whole of life scheme, so is that compensation actually just for that amount of time? Yes. And is that child still eligible for that whole of life cover? So it's a conversation that you definitely have with the agency.
Okay, so we have a question about just the planner roles, just defining again the role of the planner, the plan manager, and the support coordinator.
Okay. Yep. So when you go in the NDIS space, the planner, or the planning supports coordinator is what they call it, is the person who is going to work on your plan. So they're actually going to, so your NDIS plan is made up of your participant statement, it's going to have some goals, and it's going to have a statement of funded supports. So the planning support coordinator is the person that works on that with you, and is essentially the person who's going to assess your level of need. Look, at the beginning, the NDIS put a lot of effort into saying, develop relationships with your planning supports coordinator. Honestly, I say to people, don't invest a whole lot of emotional energy in this relationship. You're probably not going to see them again. Definitely be passionate and have vision and express to them what you want, and follow that up with some documentation, some ideas, some pictures, some photos, whatever you want, and give it to that person. But basically what they're going to do is they're going to meet with you once, they're going to go away, they're going to apply all the stuff you've given them against the tools and the rationales that the agency have, and they're going to come back and provide you with funded supports. Okay. The plan manager, as I said, it's a real misnomer. It's basically what they call a financial intermediary. It's a bookkeeper. So the plan manager is someone that you can have funded in your plan, who pays the bills for you, allows you to self-manage, allows you to have all that choice and control, but pays the bills for you. The planning supports coordinator is more likely to be you're going to have to ask about the plan manager. The planning supports the coordinator of supports is going to be more likely automatically included, but you can also discuss with your planner the level of support you want. And that's basically the NDIS acknowledging that when you get your plan, you need someone to help you navigate the space.
So the planner is the person in the NDIA who you take all the information to, and they kind of help you write the plan. The plan manager
and the coordinator of supports are roles within your plan. They're people that work with you and work for you in your plan.
And the plan manager does all the sort of financial side. The supports coordinator
does
helps
the connection. That's exactly right.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes, guys. So any other questions, shoot them over to me. And in the meantime, I'll ask one of my, what I think are the most important questions that I'm keen to kind of ask in this forum, and knowing that the Fighting Chance families have, maybe a year or a bit more before, the NDIS comes to this part of town. What should people be doing to get ready now?
Okay, so definitely having a look at what you do now and your current supports, and having think about what works well and what could work better. So what's good about where you are right now and what could be better. So that could be assessing, actually going through and looking at all the different things you do and who provides support for that, and sort of going, yep, this is, we would stay with this, or no, we want to look for some alternatives, or this is a really long-term goal that I'd like to work on. So think about the goals as well. Like I said, don't get so much caught up in the you know, oh, well, I want to have X amount of money to go for my therapy. Think about, these are the goals. I want to be able to live more independently. I want to investigate living independently in my community. Now, that goal might be a long-term goal. It might take 2 or 3 years, and as Mary pointed out, there may not be the opportunity to do it straight away. But if you put that as a goal now, we can start working towards that. You know, goals around health and well-being, goals around learning and education, goals around building networks. Think about that and note down, even just having a little bit of research yourself now, who might you access? The other thing I would say to people is that you as participants have a really important role in educating the sector and driving the sector forward. So what we've seen in Canberra and in other areas is basically a little bit of deer in the headlights behaviour by the major service providers. No matter how much they do their preparation, it just seems that when it actually comes, I think they're as terrified and nervous as any of the participants. So my thing that I say to people is that it actually is up to the participants to start to educate and tell them what you're going to expect. Try and educate yourself about how the opportunities you're going to have with this new style of funding, and then communicate what you're going to expect in that new space from your provider. So the example I use is, remember the days when all the shops closed at 12 o'clock on a Saturday? It wasn't until enough shoppers probably went to that little corner shop owner and said, you know what, I can't get here by 12. If you were open at 2, I would do my shopping. And that shop owner went, and they were brave enough to open for a couple of Saturdays, and then suddenly they became the shop of choice because people knew they were open. And now we shop 24 hours a day. I think it's really important. This has to be, and at the highest levels of the NDIS, they see this as a participant-driven scheme. So right now, in your supports, start talking to your providers about what you'd like to see them doing. If there's stuff that you'd like to go and do, if there's sports programs or education programs or skill building programs that you would like to do, go and talk to your providers now. Because if 3 or 4 other people in your area have the same conversation, then they're much more likely to start thinking about adding that support.
And in my experience of sort of being in the service provider space and talking to other service providers, it's everyone is thinking, what should we be doing? What is, you know, what do our people want? But it's exactly as you say, it's hard to, you know, guess that. So I think that's, definitely thinking, but also having the conversation and talking and sharing those thoughts. And
also being honest about what's good and what they're going to need work on, because this is the feedback in that community, that sort of double-edged sword of choice and control, and possibly just one thing, a positive thing, and just a really honest thing to end on, I suppose. I had a really interesting conversation with a family the other day. We're about to do a review for them. So they've had a plan for 12 months. And the mother, it's for a young person. And the mother said to me, she said, you know what? This 12 months has just been awful, Pieta. It has been like, we just haven't stopped. We've just worked so hard on this and everything else. And you know, and I just don't know about this NDIS stuff. And I've known this family for a number of years. And I said, let's be honest. I said, until 12 months ago, your young person used to trot off every morning at 9 o'clock and arrive back here at 5 o'clock. And you really didn't know what they did you? They said, no. I said, so it's a whole lot easier when you don't understand. it's a whole lot easier when you don't have that involvement. The stress that they'd had was because suddenly they took control of that person's supports, and they made sure that person had quality supports. And can I tell you what what that young person is producing? They're about to launch a social enterprise where she's actually going to be selling her own goods.
Amazing.
So that's why I said it's a double-edged sword.
Yes.
It's hard work.
Yes.
I do believe it'll get easier because as you get more familiar with how things work, and this next plan for us will be a lot easier because we tried this, we tried that, you know, some disastrous failures and some really good outcomes. We've navigated the space. I do believe the next 12 months will be better, but just be prepared. So prepare yourself for that as well, that it will be hard work, but like anything that's worth it, you've got to put a bit of effort in.
What a note to finish on. Amazing. Well, we're on 8:30 on the dot, everybody, and I haven't got anybody else's questions. Pieta, are you happy for me to share your email with the guys?
Yeah,
who want to contact you?
Absolutely.
So if people have your questions that they occur to them later, or indeed people who are watching on YouTube, you're very welcome to contact me, but I'll also share Pieta's email. Guys, I hope that was helpful. I feel like I learned tons. Thank you, Pieta, for the work that you're doing and your energy and your sort of commitment to making this work for people. And yeah, definitely get in contact if you guys have any questions. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.